The first thing we built was an OKR software tool. And we had seen at our last company that like OKR quarterly planning was this really painful thing for companies. It is in fact a real problem. We validated that there was a real problem. We talked to a bunch of other companies. It's a painful process. The execs get mad at each other. The employees are like, why are we doing this? Nobody adheres. It was in fact a real problem. We never built software that solved that problem for real. I actually question whether software is that great of a solution to this problem. And so we ended up needing to pivot a couple of times before we landed on the thing that really worked. I think if you have not felt good market pull before, you can get easily confused, or at least I was able to get easily confused. Maybe what you're feeling is what early market pull looks like. People are telling me this looks cool. They're saying that they're excited about what's coming. They're saying they want to see the next version of the product. And you hear that and you think, okay, maybe we are onto something. Eventually though, after 8 or 9 or 10 months of working on this, we got to a place where we said, there's not really any line you can draw between what's happening now and a business that's going to make any sense for the next round of funding by the time we run out of money here. One, it was really hard to get people to actually like pull out their credit cards and pay us. And so a lot of CEOs and people leaders were saying, yeah, we'd really like this. Can we try it? Can we test it for a quarter? Can we do a monthly thing? Can you give me a login so I can poke around? And then when we tried to get them to pay, it was very challenging. The next quarter didn't come easily. By the next time around, they're like, ugh, we got to do this. And then definitely by the third quarter, they were like, this is not happening naturally, or most of the employees. So the retention was just not there. So we had both sides were not strong enough. And so we were able to just say at some point, like, we got to just move to something new. Through the process of doing the OKR product, we had built pretty real relationships with a lot of heads of HR. That gave us the grounds that allowed us to have the conversations that we needed to have to see if we could build a performance product or whatever else that would be. But then it became a matter of talking to these people that we had built relationships with, and we kind of just said, what's everything you pay for? A starting point for us was like, what is your entire HR tech stack? There's a bunch of like small usage tools that were around, but like the core things that everybody used were an HRIS, payroll, benefits, performance management, an applicant tracking system, and like engagement surveys. And I think the reason that we were able to spot an opening in performance management, or the reason that the world sort of was such that there was an opportunity, was there was a real change in what was happening and sort of the best practices, which was that historically, people did performance management in this kind of annual hierarchical top-down sort of like ratings goal-based. It's just like a very bureaucratic heavy system. People hated it. Then around like 2012 or so, a lot of like top companies said, screw it, we're just gonna not do this at all. We're gonna completely get rid of performance management. We're going to go to no system. We're gonna do nothing. So just like, let's just cut the whole thing and see what happens. So the pendulum swung from here all the way over here. That didn't work very well either. And so a lot of leading people leaders, by the time Lattice came to market in 2015, 16, a lot of people leaders were thinking, actually, we should do something in the middle where you have this lightweight system, you should do 360 feedback. We had a lot of really small customers, many of which, they were 50 people, 70 people. GitLab was one where both the CEO and the head of people were really forward thinking on all of this sort of people management stuff. And that, there were a few lighthouse ones for us in the early days that helped a lot. Once I felt it, it was very obvious what the pull looked like, but we had people paying us annual upfront contracts because they saw our sort of design mocks without ever seeing a product, which couldn't be more different than the experience we had been having. There were leads coming organically from all over the place. People were telling their friends about us. And so people were just really pulling it from us in a very obvious way. I don't even know where these leads are coming from. And just more showing up every month. Booked, twice as much revenue in the first month on that product than we had booked in like the previous year on the last one. And I think this is probably common for startups where when you've got something that's gonna work, it's gonna work even in sort of the face of a pretty undeveloped, incomplete, semi-broken product, which we certainly had. We were building something people actually needed, and the fit was kind of unmistakable. We like mega overinvested in customer support and customer success. I would say to an extent where nobody would look at those financial statements in the early days and say this makes any sense. Not inside the benchmarks of what you should be doing. But what that meant was that we had a lot of customers who for years would say, I love what the product does. There's a lot more things I wish it would do, but wow, Lattice really cares. I write in and the most delightful, thoughtful person gets to me quickly and stays with me until it's solved, and like that means the world. And I think that our success and support orgs were actually marketing orgs. And I think if you reattributed some percentage of those spends as marketing investments, they were like way better than other marketing investments. I think there was a certain amount of luck, which was that this early niche trend that we were sure existed turned out to sweep the whole gold standard. Like that doesn't always happen. Like sometimes it just remains 20% of the most forward-thinking people, of data scientists or whatever, operate this way, but it never quite transcends. And I think there was a certain amount of luck involved that it just did make it. That was good. And like I think companies can play a role in encouraging that along, but I think that to some extent is just gonna happen or it's not. So I think shots on goal and like failing fast and trying the next thing really matters. It's a better mentality, I think, to go into it with, we care a lot about this problem space and we're going to be pretty flexibly minded about how we're going to, break into this area. You should really be spending all of your time talking to customers, and that sounds so obvious. People will find so many reasons to not do that. I talked to one, I'm good, I should be recruiting, or some VCs wanted to have coffee with me, like maybe I'll learn from them about this market, and it's all a waste of time. Like the only people who know the answers are the buyers. It's like that is where the truth is, and they'll tell you too. I actually don't think you need to be super buttoned up and user researchy about it. I think you can track it all and that's fine. But when you've stumbled on a real trend, you can't miss it. Like if you talk to 100 people and you don't take a single note, if there is a good trend in there, you will have heard it so many times that you couldn't miss it. And maybe you didn't think about it on the 17th conversation, but certainly by the 38th time it was mentioned, you'd be like, all right, I've heard this a bunch. And you get to this point where you've talked to so many customers that you're like sick of hearing the same thing over and over again. And like, that's when you've talked to enough. One of the things that I think always really helped me is I would like remind people that it really doesn't help me if you're nice to me in this meeting. I'm trying to like build a company that doesn't fail, and I can only do that if I get like genuine responses from you. What you're looking for is an insight that a market is changing. So like Lattice's was that the gold standard of how people want to do people management was truly shifting. The old systems didn't manage it, and so people needed a new system. And so outside of the unique insight about getting a product and a problem that fit together, which is like only the founders can do that, everything else is, in my view, learnable. More often than not, if you're working on something that is not getting great traction, it's probably not a 10% adjustment away, it's probably a 200% adjustment away.